Well, this is going to be embarrassing. What is up, Flick fans? Welcome back to my channel. We all have that one movie that we're ashamed of admitting that we love, like, enjoy, have nostalgia for, and that's what this video is all about. I'm going to give you guys my top 10 guilty pleasure movies. Now, there are many definitions of what a guilty pleasure movie could be. It could be a film that you believe is good, but not everyone believes to be so. It could be a film that you may not think is the best, but you have that love for it because you either grew up with it or you just appreciate it for what it is. I'm going more on the nostalgia side today, but I do have some films on here that I didn't necessarily grow up with. I watched, had a great time with, acknowledge there are flaws, but I do have some pretty solid movies, in my opinion, on this list, but that's what this video is. It's basically the movies that I love that a lot of people do not love. So it's going to be a somewhat embarrassing video, but I figured I would share this with you all and give you the opportunity to do the same thing down below. So if you enjoy these kinds of different videos, be sure to let me know by smashing that thumbs up button and leave your comments. What are your top 10 guilty pleasures? What's a movie that you just don't want to admit? You can feel safe in my comments section. Admit all you want. Give me those films, man. And I'm sure there are plenty that I missed, but these are just the ones looking through Letterboxd that I was able to come up with. But of course, we got to start out with some honorable mentions. Or dishonorable? Honorable. My first honorable mention was beloved by fans for the most part, but critics didn't necessarily respond. It is rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. This is Madagascar, and even Madagascar 2. I know people didn't love these movies, but growing up with the Madagascar films, I do have a soft spot of nostalgia for them. In my next honorable mention spot, I'm actually going to group the second and third Pirates of the Caribbean films, Dead Man's Chest and At World's End. Gore Verbinski gave us an obvious great first movie, but the second two were not very well received by critics and some fans, but you know what? I continued to love and thrive with this series growing up. They don't hold up as well today, but I do still kind of appreciate them for being sequels. The next honorable mention I have is a film from 2017 called Mom and Dad, featuring Nicolas Cage and Selma Blair. Critics actually responded well to this movie, but audiences hated it. A 39% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, and I know so many people who just couldn't stand this film. I think it is Nicolas Cage at his most Nicolas Cage. I had a bit of fun with it. I considered it one of my guilty pleasures of that year. The next honorable mention I have is a movie that is both rotten audience-wise and critic-wise on Rotten Tomatoes. That is Hancock. I am actually genuinely a fan of Hancock as a superhero movie. I don't talk about it all that often because I don't love this film, right? Some of these honorable mentions I don't love. I think they're okay, but that is far better than what other people give it credit for. Then we have Olympus Has Fallen, critically panned all the way around, low scores on Letterboxd, Rotten Tomatoes. I really enjoyed Olympus Has Fallen. I thought it was a super fun, super solid action movie, followed up by a very mediocre sequel. But out of White House Down and Olympus Has Fallen that year, I was definitely team Olympus Has Fallen. Oz the Great and Powerful. What? Austin, what is this? Came out in 2013, directed by Sam Raimi. I had a bit of fun with it. It's okay. It's not great. But people hated this movie, man. And I walked out going, I mean, yeah, people don't like it, but I like it. I thought James Franco was pretty good. Stuart Little. I grew up with Stuart Little, man. I have nostalgia for Stuart Little. And the audience score for this movie is so low for this and the sequel. But you know what? It has a soft spot in my heart, as does Sky High. Now, Sky High, I genuinely believe is a good movie. This is one of the only honorable mentions that I would put up there in terms of super high quality, but I actually know quite a few people in my everyday life that do not like Sky High at all. They think it's ridiculous, and I think a lot of it has to do with when you watched this movie, right? Did you grow up with Sky High? Did you not grow up with Sky High? Do you understand the goofiness of the movie? I do, and I really, really like this movie. And that's the thing about a guilty pleasure too, right? It's how are you going to rank it, Austin? Are you ranking these in terms of quality, or are you ranking them in terms of how guilty you feel about loving them? I am going off guiltiness. So some of these films I actually think are better than ones above it, but how guilty do I feel loving it? Well, Armageddon comes in at number 10. This is Michael Bay, a movie that, once again, I don't think is great, but I have fun every time I revisit this. It's cheesy. It's the end of the world. An asteroid is coming towards Earth. We have to save the planet and all of the people on it. And it's full of Michael Bay-isms. Austin, how can you like this ridiculous premise of a movie? Well, it has some genuinely good performances, some nice emotion towards the end, and there's something about the way this film is constructed. I mean, I think pure nostalgia when I watch Armageddon. It is like the disaster movie of that time, in my opinion, and it's one of the more entertaining Michael Bay movies. I think Affleck is okay for what he was going for. I think Willis is really good, and some of the performances are genuinely more outstanding than the movie itself. But Armageddon, every time I watched, I'm sitting back going, this is ridiculous, but I'm enjoying myself. Coming in at number 9, if we were basing this solely off of quality, this would be either 1 or 2 on my list. But I don't feel as guilty about it as I do others, but I still feel guilty about absolutely responding to John Carter. I genuinely think this is one of the better live-action Disney movies that we've seen, and one of the only reasons it was critically panned is because maybe it didn't necessarily come together in the way that a lot of people anticipated. And the name, the title, John Carter. Well, what a stupid name. The marketing for this movie was horrible. That's why it bombed at the box office. But I genuinely believe it's a fun film. I even went back and did a commentary with Ryan Snelling recently for Sight and Sound. And this movie holds up in so many aspects. Sure, some of the CGI maybe isn't the best, but the concepts are there. The shell is there for the taking to make this a great movie. Now, is it a great movie? No. But I think John Carter is better than a lot of people think John Carter is, and I feel guilty about it. Number 8, I feel bad about this. I feel really bad. Because I just recently made fun of a movie that actually reminded me of this movie. The film I was making fun of was what's the John Cena one with the firefight? I can't even remember the name now. That's embarrassing. I'm not going to look it up because I don't care. But the one that I like is The Game Plan. Look, it's not very good. I'll admit that. But there's charm within the chemistry here, and that's what it comes down to, is The Rock and his Disney-esque charm that he was bringing in these mid-2000 movies. He had to get his career off the ground, folks. This was the only way he could do that, apparently. He did this in The Tooth Fairy. Don't like The Tooth Fairy, but The Game Plan resonated with me when I was growing up, and I go back and I watch it today. I watched it a couple years ago, and I'm like, I still find this charming. Audiences enjoyed it. Critics gave it a 28% on Rotten Tomatoes, and you know what? I can't even blame them for that. It is a run-of-the-mill Disney movie, but it's Madison Pettis, it's The Rock, it was really cute, and I'm embarrassed. This is one of those films. You either love it or you hate it. You are either on board with the characters that really aren't the best human beings, or you just like, I don't want to see this anymore. Why am I watching this in the first place? It's Jim Carrey and Matthew Broderick's The Cable Guy. Now, you guys know how I feel about Ferris Bueller. I'm a sucker for Matthew Broderick. Then I'm also a sucker for Jim Carrey because he's one of my favorite actors of all time. This is a dark comedy. It's thought-provoking, I think a bit more than a lot of people give it credit for. It's subversive in terms of its wit. It has a lot of charm. It doesn't necessarily come together in the long run. It's uneven, and I didn't love the third act, but The Cable Guy is one of the more underrated dark comedies of its time. I think that's why it has a cult following. Once again, it's rotten on Rotten Tomatoes. The audience score isn't all that great. I know people who genuinely hate this movie, but I watch it, and I'm sitting back going, there's something about this film that I just respond to. It's not great, but it's okay. Look, y'all, I'll even acknowledge, I don't think this movie's all that good, but I grew up with Shark Tale. The Will Smith Jack Black fish movie. It's ridiculous. It's so ridiculous. And to be flat honest with you, it's been a while since I've watched it. I'm afraid to go back and rewatch it because I'm afraid it will not hold up. But growing up watching this multiple times on DVD, I would get it out. I'd be so happy to have that disc in my hand. Ooh, let's watch Shark Tale. We got Will Smith. We got Jack Black. We got Robert De Niro. This movie is so silly. A lot of pop culture-esque jokes, a lot of jokes that will not resonate today, a lot of things that just don't work in terms of the animation. It wasn't all that special, but Martin Scorsese was a voice in this movie, so, Shark Tale. I grew up a Spy Kids kid. If you grow up during the Spy Kids phase, you're going to love Spy Kids. I was 7 years old when this movie came out. Not Spy Kids 1, because I think more people receive Spy Kids 1 than Spy Kids 2. I liked Spy Kids 2. Now, Spy Kids 3, the 3D adventure, that's when it started to lose me. I'm like, I don't believe any of this. But for some silly reason, I bought into Spy Kids 2. And Steve Buscemi's in this movie. I'm reliving my childhood as I'm speaking right now. And, a lot of people will watch, ridiculous action movies or 80s pulpy films that don't resonate or hold up a lot today. For me, it's a lot of those animated movies, those movies that I grew up with as a kid, those early 2000s films that I go back and I rewatch now. And if you would have asked me, 15 years ago, Austin, do you like Batman and Robin? I would have said yes, because I was young and it was colorful. And now I watch Batman and Robin. It's so silly, but some of these other films, like a Spy Kids 2, I watched this 4 or 5 years ago, and I'm like, it's still cute. It's not great, but it's cute. So Spy Kids 2, beloved by me, not by many other people. Critics gave it a good score, but audiences, 39% on Rotten Tomatoes. That's not good. I have this at number 4 because while I feel very guilty about this, just because of what I've heard from some critics who despise this movie as a sequel, a lot of them came out with the hype of the first film. I do think more audiences like this movie than not, but then you go on an app like Letterboxd, and not the best scores on there, and some critics give it a hard time. I think Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls, is a pure showcase for Jim Carrey and what he can do. And I said earlier, John Carter and another movie are the two movies I actually think are good movies. I think Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls is the perfect comedy for what a comedy is supposed to do, and that is make you laugh. If you're in this for a cohesive narrative and for brilliant filmmaking, you're watching the wrong film. And I know a lot of people love the first Ace Ventura and don't love the second. I am on the other side. I love the first. I think this one's really, really funny. Now, it's been a bit since I've watched it, but every time I've watched it, I have died laughing, and I honestly quote this movie just as much as any other Jim Carrey film. Now, obviously, my favorite Jim Carrey movie is Eternal Sunshine, then you have Dumb and Dumber, and even the first Ace Ventura. But When Nature Calls is a sequel that I absolutely crack up at every time I watch it. I consider it a guilty pleasure. With 2 Michael Bay movies on this list? Austin, what are you doing? So I've always said I defend the first Transformers movie. I despise a lot of the other Transformers movies. I kind of like Dark of the Moon. I don't like the fact that they replaced Megan Fox. I don't think a lot of it makes sense narratively from the first 2 movies, kind of bringing in new characters and where Shia LaBeouf's story is, the Sam Witwicky. I'm just like, how did we get here? But as a movie, as an epic, blockbuster, CGI-filled experience, and a lot of this comes down to the fact that they actually handle the Transformers very well in this movie. Some of the robots, a bit racist, a bit, I don't love them. But the overall experience of Dark of the Moon is great. The movie is not great, but the experience was great when I watched this in a theater. And that final battle has to be one of the more entertaining, blockbuster-esque, epic things I've ever seen on the big screen. So I had such a good time in the theater. I'm going to give this movie 3 stars. I'm rating it, too. We're doing ratings now. But I acknowledge that narratively, structurally, it's not the best. Number 2 is a film with a 15% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a rotten audience score. It's a 55. It's a comedy that you either love or you either hate. That's not true. I don't love White Chicks, but I think White Chicks is really, really funny. I do. I laugh. Does it hold up in terms of where we are as a society now? Not necessarily, but I don't care about that. I grew up, again, with the nostalgia, kind of watching White Chicks with my parents. It's really one of the only comedies like this that my mom would let me watch. I was 9 when this movie came out, and I believe the first time I watched it, I was 10 or 11, and it cracked me up. The Wayans brothers are genuinely funny in this film, and I think it's a very good satirical movie. You obviously have the memes and the things that resonate with audiences today and stick out, and moments that you can pull out of this movie. As a whole, and I'll say this about a lot of the movies on this list, it isn't the best, right? I would probably critique it a lot harder if I watched it for the first time today, but something that I grew up with. I enjoy White Chicks. I think it's funny. I think Ace Ventura, When Nature Calls is a better movie, but I feel guilty about liking this, man. Number 1, I'm cheating. I'm putting 2 movies on this list. I'm a cheater. Scooby Doo, Scooby Doo 2. The first one has a 30% on Rotten Tomatoes. It has a 38 audience score. The second one has a 22% on Rotten Tomatoes and a 39 audience score. Congratulations. I don't care. And that's what I'll say about all of these movies. I acknowledge that, and a lot of you guys will feel the same way, but that's why we share our own lists. You're going to be like, Austin, what are you doing, man? These aren't good movies. I love going back and revisiting these Scooby Doo films. I do. They don't hold up all the way. They're very cartoonish. But aren't these movies based off of cartoons? I mean, it's not the gang, the team that we're used to that a lot of other people grew up with. This is the gang that I grew up with. Freddie Prinze Jr., the Shaggy voice from Matthew Lillard. Oh, it holds up to this day. A great actress in Linda Cardellini. I mean, you have a good cast. And I think that's what made these films resonate with kids, right? The adults are going to watch these movies. They're going to be like, "Gah." And I'm going to do the same thing with movies that are coming out today. I'm going to be like, "Gah." But there's going to be a generation of kids that grow up with the movies that I find bad today that are going to love them and have nostalgia for them down the road. That is me with Scooby Doo and Scooby Doo 2. I have this pure ball of nostalgia. And I probably watch these movies, no joke, more than any other movies, excluding Toy Stories. In general, I'm talking a lot. I would be putting the VHSs and the DVDs in consistently as a child. So they have a soft spot in my heart in terms of entertainment, in terms of how I love this cast, and that's what makes these films is the cast. Bar none for me. Number 1, it is the series that I feel the most guilty about because of how panned they are by a lot of people today. How in the world could I forget the magic of Mike Myers' Cat in the Hat? One of the greatest movies ever made. Why, I'm the Cat in the Hat. There's no doubt about that. I'm a super fundiferous feline who's here to make sure that you're me-line, key-line, turpentine. I got nothing. I'm not so good with the rhyming. Not really. No. The cinematic revelation known as the Cat in the Hat. I can't believe I forgot about this movie. I had to interrupt my own video to bring you the special announcement of the fact that there's something about this. It's so ridiculous. It's bad. It's a bad movie. But the Cat in the Hat, you watch it when he's singing the song and he says, "How much is that canine American in the window?" It's so dumb. It's so dumb that I forgot about the fact that I have this affinity for this movie. And it's not even that I like it. I just constantly tweet about it. And it comes up in conversation. And it comes up in my mind. I dream about it. I dream about Mike Myers in the Cat in the Hat suit. So, thank you guys for watching this video. I appreciate you for sticking around for this special announcement. Don't even know where it would go in the top 10. Number 17. That's where it goes. You guys are the best. Leave your lists down below. Let me know. What are your guiltiest movies? I'm talking embarrassing things. Comment these thoughts. And let me know what you thought of my list. Is it ridiculous? Of course it is. But that's what's so fun about this. Stay tuned later today. We're talking Disney+. You guys are truly the best. I keep saying it, but you are. I'll see you soon.